During a family Zoom, my aunt mocked, "You're the joke of the clan, log off." I did, but not before disconnecting their internet service I'd been paying for. I, 32M, never thought a family video call would be the thing that finally broke me. But there I was, staring at 12 little squares on my laptop screen, each one containing a face I'd known my entire life, and feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. The call had been my mother's idea. She'd wanted everyone to catch up, she said, because we hadn't all been together since my father's funeral 18 months ago. I should have known better than to join. I should have made up an excuse, claimed I had work, anything. But I'd logged on anyway, because despite everything, some stupid part of me still wanted to belong. My aunt started in on me about 15 minutes into the call. She'd been drinking. I could tell by the way her words came out slightly slurred, by the particular gleam in her eyes that I'd learned to recognize as danger when I was still in elementary school. She asked me how work was going, and I made the mistake of being honest. I told her I'd been laid off from my tech job 3 months ago and was freelancing while looking for something permanent. The silence that followed was worse than any insult could have been. Then my uncle, her husband, made some comment about how people in my generation just didn't have work ethic. My cousin chimed in about how she'd never been unemployed a day in her life. Another cousin mentioned how his company was hiring, but probably not for someone with my limited skill set. The attacks came from everywhere, overlapping, building on each other like some kind of coordinated assault. I sat there taking it, my face burning, my throat tight. I'd learned young not to fight back, not to defend myself, because that only made things worse. The family had decided long ago what role I would play, and nothing I did would ever change that. Then my aunt delivered the killing blow. She leaned forward into her camera, her face filling her square on my screen, and told me I was the joke of the clan and suggested I log off. She said it with this smile, this satisfied little smile that told me she'd been waiting for the opportunity to say exactly that. The others laughed. Not all of them, but enough. My mother said my aunt's name in this weak, half-hearted way that was supposed to be a reprimand, but just sounded tired. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not break, exactly. Crack. Like ice on a pond when the temperature rises just enough. I moved my cursor to the leave button. My hand was shaking. But before I clicked, my eyes landed on something in the browser tab next to the video call. My internet service provider's account page, still logged in from earlier that morning when I'd been reviewing my bills. And that's when I remembered. 6 years ago, when I'd gotten my first real job out of college, I'd wanted to do something nice for the family. My aunt and uncle had always complained about their internet being too expensive, about how they couldn't afford the good speeds. My grandmother, who lived with them, could barely load her email. So I'd offered to add them to my business account. I was making decent money, and the family plan wasn't much more expensive than what I was already paying. They'd been so grateful back then. My aunt had actually hugged me. Over the years, I'd added others. My cousin and his wife, when they'd just had their first baby and money was tight. Another cousin who was in college. My uncle on my dad's side. All told, I was paying for internet service for 7 family households. It cost me nearly $400 a month, but I'd kept doing it because it made me feel useful. It made me feel like I mattered to them. I looked at my aunt's face on that screen, still smirking, and I opened the account page. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. I navigated to the services page. 7 accounts, 7 addresses, all under my name, all paid from my bank account via automatic withdrawal. The others were still talking, still making jokes at my expense. Someone said something about me probably living in my mother's basement. I didn't live with my mother. I had my own apartment, small but mine, paid for with money I earned. But they didn't know that because they'd never asked, never cared to know anything real about my life. I clicked on the first account, my aunt's. The screen asked me if I was sure I wanted to cancel the service. I hesitated for just a second. Then I clicked yes. Immediate cancellation. I did the same for my uncle's account, then my cousin's, then the next one, and the next. One by one, I canceled all 7 accounts, requesting immediate service termination. The system confirmed each cancellation with a little green check mark. 7 green check marks. The whole process took maybe 90 seconds. Nobody on the call noticed. They were too busy laughing about something my other uncle had said about participation trophies ruining my generation. Then I watched. It took about 30 seconds before my aunt's video froze. Her mouth was open mid-laugh, pixelated and still. Then her square went black with a message about connection lost. 5 seconds later, my uncle's feed cut out. Then my cousins. One by one, like dominoes falling, their faces disappeared from my screen. The remaining family members got quiet, confused. Someone asked if their internet was acting up. My grandmother's voice, tinny through my mother's speakers, asked what happened to the picture. My aunt's name appeared in the chat, a message sent from her phone. Their internet had just died. I unmuted myself for the first time since the insults had started. I told them all I had something to take care of and needed to go. My voice sounded calm, almost cheerful. I told them to have a nice rest of their call. Then I left the meeting. I closed my laptop and sat in the silence of my apartment. My hands were still shaking, but it was different now. Not from humiliation, from something else. Something that felt almost like relief. My phone started buzzing within 5 minutes. My aunt calling. I declined. She called again. Declined. Then text messages started flooding in. She demanded to know what happened to their internet. I didn't respond. My uncle called. Declined. My cousin texted asking if I knew anything about their service being cut off. I left it on read. By evening, I had 37 missed calls and over 60 text messages. Most were from my aunt and uncle, progressing from confused to angry to absolutely furious. My aunt sent me a message calling me every name she could apparently think of. My uncle threatened legal action. My cousin tried the sympathy route, talking about his kids needing internet for school. I responded to exactly one message. My mother had texted asking what was going on, saying my aunt was calling her screaming about the internet. I sent her a simple reply. I told her I'd canceled a service I'd been personally paying for. I told her it was my money and my choice. She texted back asking why I'd do this, saying it seemed very spiteful. That word, spiteful, like I was the problem. Like I was the one who'd spent years treating someone like garbage and then acted surprised when they finally walked away. I didn't respond to her either. Update 1. It's been 4 days since the Zoom call, and the fallout has been worse than I expected, but also, strangely, better. The phone calls and texts didn't stop. They actually got worse. My aunt showed up at my apartment on day 2. I didn't answer the door. She stood in the hallway yelling about how I was a spiteful, ungrateful bastard who'd screwed over his own family. My neighbor actually called building security. When security asked her to leave, she apparently told them I was mentally unstable and had stolen money from her. Security didn't buy it, thankfully. They escorted her out. My uncle tried a different approach. He sent me a long email detailing exactly how much hardship I'd caused. His business ran from home, he said, and without internet, he was losing clients. My grandmother couldn't contact her doctors. My cousin's kids were missing online classes. He laid it on thick, every possible consequence framed as a disaster that was entirely my fault. I read the email twice. The first time, I felt guilty. That old familiar guilt that had kept me compliant for 32 years. The second time, I felt something different. Anger. I wrote back. I told him that in the 6 years I'd been paying for their internet, not one of them had ever thanked me. Not once had they acknowledged that I was spending nearly $5,000 a year on a service that benefited them. I reminded him that I was currently unemployed, that I'd told them this on the call right before they'd torn me apart for it, and that maybe if his business and my cousin's kids and my grandmother's health were so dependent on internet service, they should have been paying for it themselves. I asked him if he remembered what my aunt had said to me. I asked him if he remembered laughing. He didn't respond. My mother kept trying to mediate. She called me 3 times a day. She used words like family and forgiveness and moving forward. She said my aunt hadn't meant what she'd said, that she'd been drinking, that I was being too sensitive. She said cutting off their internet was a step too far. I asked my mother if she defended me during the call. Silence. I asked her if she'd called my aunt afterwards and told her what she'd said was unacceptable. More silence. I asked her why it was my job to be the bigger person when I was the one who'd been attacked. She told me I was breaking her heart. I told her mine had been broken for years and nobody had noticed. But here's the thing that surprised me. 3 family members reached out to support me. My younger cousin, who'd been on the call but hadn't joined in the mockery, sent me a private message. She said she'd been disgusted by what happened. She said she'd tried to speak up but had been talked over. She said she was sorry. We talked for an hour. She told me stories I'd never heard about how the family had treated her, how they'd made her feel invisible. We weren't alone, she and I. We'd just been isolated from each other. My father's brother, who hadn't been on the call, heard about everything from my mother. He called me, and said he wished I'd told him years ago what was happening. He distanced himself from that side of the family a decade ago for similar reasons. He said I was welcome at his house anytime, that his door was always open. And my godmother, my mother's childhood friend who was family in spirit if not in blood, took me out for coffee. She told me she was proud of me. Nobody had ever said that to me before, not about anything that mattered. She said standing up for yourself wasn't cruelty, that protecting yourself wasn't revenge, that I had every right to stop setting myself on fire to keep others warm. I cried in that coffee shop. 32 years old, and I cried like a kid. The internet situation itself has been almost comical to watch unfold from a distance. My aunt and uncle had to get their own service, which apparently required a credit check they nearly failed and an installation wait time of 2 weeks. They blame me for that too, somehow. My cousin set up a mobile hotspot that's costing him more per month than what I was paying. My uncle on dad's side just went to the library for his internet needs, which according to my other uncle made him a freeloader. None of them have apologized. Not one. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks now, and I need to write this down because I still can't quite believe what's happened. Last week, my aunt sent me a Facebook message. Not an apology. An invoice. An actual invoice, itemized, for 6 years of internet service at the rate she claimed she would have paid if she'd had her own plan. She claimed I owed her for service interruption and emotional distress, and that if I didn't pay, she'd take me to small claims court. I screenshot the invoice and sent it to my godmother without comment. She called me immediately, laughing so hard she could barely breathe. She told me to save everything, every message, every email, every text. She said if my aunt was actually stupid enough to take me to court, I'd win in about 30 seconds. But the invoice did something unexpected. It severed the last thread of doubt I'd been carrying. I'd spent 3 weeks wondering if maybe I had overreacted, if maybe I should have handled things differently. That invoice, that absolute audacity, killed every bit of guilt I had left. I responded to my aunt's message. I told her I'd be happy to see her in court. I told her I had 6 years of bank statements showing exactly who had paid for what. I told her I also had a recording of the Zoom call because the meeting had been set to auto-record without anyone apparently realizing it, and I'd downloaded it before the host deleted it. I told her that call included her telling me to log off, and multiple family members mocking my unemployment. I told her to do whatever she felt she needed to do. Then I blocked her on every platform I could think of. She didn't file anything. But my uncle did try one more approach. He called my mother and told her that I was tearing the family apart, that my father would be ashamed of me. That one got back to me through my mother, who seemed to expect it to make me cave. Instead, I drove to the cemetery where my father was buried. I hadn't been there since the funeral. I sat by his grave and talked to him like he was still here. I told him everything. I told him about the years of being the family joke, about the Zoom call, about the internet, about all of it. I told him I was sorry if I was disappointing him. But then I realized something. My father had been quiet, too. He'd never stood up to his family either. He'd taken their comments and their jokes and their little cruelties, and he'd taught me to do the same by example. He'd been a good man, a kind man, but he'd been broken by these same people long before I was. I wasn't disappointing him. I was doing what he'd never been able to do. I was choosing myself. I went home and made a decision. I drafted an email to every family member who'd been on that call. I kept it short. I told them I was done. I told them I wouldn't be attending family gatherings anymore, that I wouldn't be available for holidays or birthdays or funerals or weddings. I told them they'd made it clear over and over what they thought of me, and I was finally listening. I told them I wished them well, but I was walking away. I listed every instance I could remember of being belittled, mocked, or dismissed. Every Christmas where my accomplishments were brushed aside. Every Thanksgiving where I was the punchline. Every birthday where my calls weren't returned. It was a long email, longer than I expected. Seeing it all written out, I couldn't believe I'd tolerated it for so long. I ended the email with this. I told them the internet thing wasn't revenge. Revenge would have been staying silent, staying small, and letting them keep using me. What I'd done was just stop volunteering to be their victim. I sent it to 15 people. Then I blocked most of their numbers and email addresses. The responses I didn't block were predictable. Anger. Denial. My uncle claimed I was remembering things wrong, that I was too sensitive, that I was making everything about me. My mother begged me to reconsider, said I was hurting her by doing this. But my younger cousin, the one who'd reached out before, replied saying she was doing the same thing. She was done too. My father's brother said he understood and supported me. My godmother sent me a single line, "Proud of you." 3 people. Out of 15, 3 people responded with kindness. That told me everything I needed to know. Update 3. It's been 2 months since the Zoom call. 2 months since I canceled those internet accounts and watched my family's true colors finally show in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. I got a new job 3 weeks ago. It's fully remote, pays better than my last position, and the team actually seems to value what I bring to the table. My first paycheck came through, and I looked at my bank account and realized I had an extra $400 that I wasn't spending on people who hated me. It felt surreal. I took my younger cousin and my father's brother out to dinner with some of that money. We talked about starting our own traditions, our own version of family that wasn't built on hierarchy and cruelty. My cousin admitted she'd been thinking about cutting ties for years, but had been too scared. She said watching me do it gave her courage. That meant more to me than anything else that's happened. My mother and I are in a strange place. We talk occasionally, but there's a distance now that I don't think will ever fully close. She asked me last week if I'd consider coming to Christmas. I asked her if my aunt would be there. She said yes. I said no. She cried. I felt bad about that, but not bad enough to change my answer. She told me I was giving up on family. I told her family gave up on me a long time ago, and I was just finally accepting reality. The rest of them have mostly gone quiet. My aunt tried reaching out through my mother one more time, claiming she wanted to apologize in person. My mother pressured me to give her a chance. I told my mother that if my aunt wanted to apologize, she could do it in writing, and that I'd consider whether to read it. No apology ever came. I wasn't surprised. My uncle's business apparently recovered fine once he got his own internet service, which told me everything I needed to know about his claims of financial ruin. My cousin's kids are doing well in school according to social media posts I can still see. My grandmother is still emailing according to family gossip. None of the disasters I was supposed to feel guilty about actually happened. What had happened was this. I started sleeping better. The knot in my stomach that I'd carried for years started to loosen. I stopped having dreams about family gatherings where everyone was laughing at me. I stopped reflexively composing defenses in my head for crimes I hadn't committed. I started therapy too. My therapist asked me in our 3rd session why I'd waited so long to set boundaries. I didn't have a good answer. She said that was okay, that most people who grow up in dysfunctional family systems don't realize they're allowed to leave until something breaks. The Zoom call was my something. I've been thinking about that a lot. About how much power we give to people who don't deserve it just because they share our blood. About how we call it loyalty when it's really just fear. About how we let ourselves be diminished over and over because we're told that's what family means. My godmother told me something last week that's been stuck in my head. She said that walking away wasn't burning a bridge. She said you can't burn a bridge that was never actually built, that what I'd been standing on all those years was just the idea of a bridge, and the moment I tested its weight, it dissolved. She was right. There was no bridge. There never had been. I'd been standing on nothing, pretending I was connected to something solid, and exhausting myself trying to keep up the illusion. I'm not pretending anymore. The family clan they told me I was the joke of doesn't exist for me now. I've built something different. Smaller. Quieter. Made of people who actually give a damn. My cousin and I have coffee every Sunday. My father's brother calls me every Wednesday just to check in. My godmother sends me random memes that make me laugh. These are my people now. I won't lie and say it doesn't hurt sometimes. There are moments when I see a family photo posted online and feel this flash of something like grief. But it passes faster now, because I remember what the price of admission was. I remember sitting on that Zoom call feeling smaller and smaller until I almost disappeared. I'm not disappearing anymore. I'm right here. Solid. Real. Taking up space. And I don't owe anyone an apology for that. The internet bill gets paid now to just one address. Mine. And that feels exactly right. If you'd like to see more stories like this, a gentle tap on the subscribe button would mean the world to us.